Good morning. I wanted to make a short video showing from even the New Testament that God has not replaced Israel with the church, but at the same time, believers are believers, um, regardless of ethnicity. Um, no one has favoritism. The church doesn't have, you know, the church doesn't have a greater purpose or standing than Israel, and Israel doesn't have a greater standing or purpose than the church. But God uses different entities, different periods for his purposes. But you can read in Romans chapter 11 that from Israel's rejection, their big hurdle is the Messiah. They're okay with the law, but their biggest hurdle is the Messiah. And that their rejection of the Messiah is basically what brought the uh, the blessings to the Gentiles, which created the church. The church is Jew and Gentiles, but predominantly it's Gentiles. But the church has a purpose as an entity from God. But at some point, the Gentiles will stop believing, which Romans 11 says, and God's going to go back to Israel. And that's going to be in the kingdom, I believe. But you can even see uh, Jesus on words. He says stuff like the Queen of Sheba is going to rise up in that generation, and the men of Nineveh are going to rise up in that generation. Well, Sheba was probably southern Saudi Arabia or Yemen. Nineveh was somewhere in the Middle East, but those people repented. Nineveh, the people of Nineveh repented at the preaching of Jonah, and the Queen of Sheba came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. Those those are different countries in the Middle East that believed in the God of the Bible, and they're going to be in the kingdom too. So that's even from the New Testament, all of this is. And you can read in John chapter 14, Jesus says, "In my Father's house are many mansions." Now, this is before the gospel was even being preached. And so these mansions have to be the Old Testament saints and the believers from the Old Testament. And then he says, I go to prepare a place for you. So the Old Testament people have houses, and then he's going to prepare places for us, the New Testament people. So we're all going to have houses in heaven. So believers are believers.